Sorry.
I thought it said live streaming. Okay.
I have to click an extra button on YouTube. Okay, now you're good.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. On behalf of the Pinellas Community Foundation and our lovely panel today, we want to thank you for joining us for the Large Capital Projects Full Proposal Committee Review Meeting for the ARPA Nonprofit Project, the ARPA Nonprofit Capital Project Fund. I am going to kick us off for today's meeting and just briefly go over the agenda for today's meeting. We're going to be introducing our committee members to you. They will be sharing a declaration of no conflicts, and then we will get into reviewing each full proposal through a panel discussion where we will then rank and provide recommendations to the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners. And then we will hold public comment for items not on the agenda, and then we will adjourn. And now I will pass it over to Jocelyn to give us a brief background on the program.
Good afternoon, everyone. So a quick summary of the process, which many of you are quite familiar with by now. This Nonprofit Capital Project Fund is meant for nonprofit capital purchases and projects to address economic harm that was caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. So again, this is a federal award number that was awarded to the Pinellas County government, and we are working as a partner with the county to administer this funding. Overview of the timeline as well. So letters of intent for these large projects were accepted from August 8th to September 8th of last year, and your review committee, all of whom are present today, scored and recommended the top ranking LOIs move forward to submit the full proposals, and we ultimately received 19 qualifying full proposals for consideration. So again, these 19 requests totaled $22 million, a little over that, and these are what we'll be discussing today. And I'll pass it over to our committee chair, Alethea Stanfield.
Alethea, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Alethea Stanfield. I'm a member of the Pinellas Community Foundation Board, as well as stated, chairing the large capital projects. I do not have a conflict. Tony, you want to go next? I'm just going to go down the screen.
My name is Tony Collins. I think I'm not on mute, right? Okay. I'm president of Blake Collins Group. My background is in economic development and public relations. Those are two separate things, and I have no conflicts.
Gail?
My name is Gail Grady. I'm a managing partner for a civil engineering firm, professional engineer, and I have no conflicts.
Okay, Michelle.
Hello, my name is Michelle Nadeau. I'm an attorney at Colbert Nadeau in Clearwater. I don't have any conflicts.
Rick?
My name is Rick Davis. I think my perceived specialty is education, but my specialty by training is actually finance. And I have no conflict.
Christina?
My name is Christina Morrison, and I am a business consultant with Helm Construction Solution, and I have no conflict.
Okay. Jocelyn? Go ahead, Jocelyn,
My name is Jocelyn Howard. I'm the Senior Program Officer with Pinellas Community Foundation for this ARPA project.
Cherie?
Good day. I am Cherie Wright-Jones, and I have a background in philanthropy, nonprofit management, and community engagement, and I have no conflicts.
Robin?
Hello, everyone. My name is Robin Huber. I represent Diaz Fritz Group General Contractors, and I have no conflict.
Okay. David?
I'm David Bender. I'm the Director of Grants and Operations at PCF, and just helping this process move along. Not a decision maker, for the record.
And finally, Duggan.
Good afternoon. I'm Duggan Cooley. I'm the CEO of the Pinellas Community Foundation, part of the staff team that's working on this, and also not a decision maker on this project.
All right. Rose, shall we begin?
Me? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
sorry. Rose Cervantes, I am a program officer for the ARPA Nonprofit Capital Project Fund, and I do not make any decisions on this program or grant process.
Okay. So shall you begin taking us through the process of how the ranking and where we're going to start?
So as a heads up, we have this ranked list as well as a PowerPoint that has this score for that application and the comments that you all left. We can switch between them throughout the meeting.
Okay.
And they're in the order of the PowerPoint is the order that they're ranked here.
Okay. Okay. Okay, let's start with St. Petersburg Free Clinic. Or is anyone in the audience representing St. Petersburg Free Clinic?
Yes, we have Zoe.
Okay.
And Shayna.
All right.
So I don't know that we need to hear from.
No, I just
them now.
want to know. They have requested $3 million. We have our reviewers' comments. Are there any questions specifically for St. Petersburg Free Clinic? While we have two of their representatives here.
I'm happy to ask a question, and it's more of a clarification. When you look at the bids that came in, they've selected a contractor and they have competitive bids for one component of the work. But it would probably be good for others to understand the bidding process as they issue an addendum to the current contract that they have with Hennessy, to give everyone some assurance that they are planning to competitively bid each of the components.
Mm-hmm.
So I have trust based on the AIA contract that they issued as an example that is their process, but it wasn't completely clear first looking at it that they do intend to use the competitive process. So I think it would be a good clarification from them.
Okay.
I support Gail's recommendation.
All right.
This is Robin Huber. The one thing I didn't see it was a great submission, and it definitely is going to, in my opinion, help the community. But I didn't see a contingency plan in place with the contractor, or if there was backup funding. Most importantly, contingency with the general contractor. Did I miss that?
So we have two questions, right?
Yes.
So they get 3 minutes per question.
Okay.
So the first one is about could we restate the question from Gail?
The first question related to, is there a contingency for the general contractor or subcontractors? They did not see that in the proposal. And the second question I just lost.
The second question is just they did have a contingency in their estimate. It was 10%, but they can certainly clarify that. And the second question is to just confirm or affirm that they have a competitive bid process for each of the work components within the contract that Hennessy, or the quote that Hennessy provided.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by that, I took it to mean you're talking about subcontractors.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Hi, yes, this is Zoe Blair Andrews with the St. Petersburg Free Clinic. To address the first question regarding contingency, that is correct, Gail. It is built into the contract with Hennessy. And to address the second question regarding competitive bidding processes, Hennessy does that with the subcontractors. So we submitted the walk-in cooler as the largest portion of the reconstruction process as an example, but they'll do that for each part of the project.
Thank you for that.
I have a question. As you can see, as was presented, we have $22 million worth of requests for a little over $10 million available. If we, for some reason, do not fund the entire $3 million, what would be your funding priority of the projects you included in this proposal?
In order to be fully operational as a food bank, we will have to continue with the entire construction process. Just not receiving full funding would slow our timeline down and our ability to open the food bank in the timeline that we proposed.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments concerning the St. Petersburg Free Clinic? Thank you. The next proposal is the Pinellas Ex-Offender Reentry Coalition, or PERC. They're requesting 2.5 million dollars. Any comments concerning PERC?
Hello, this is Robin. One question I did have is what your success rate of your program services are today. And also the team leadership descriptions didn't really elaborate on years of experience per leader to kind of understand their roles with working on the project itself, how they're related to the organization. May I ask those two questions, please?
Are you guys able to hear me? This is Michael Gelazzo.
Yes.
So to answer the two questions, well, I'll answer the second question first. I'll answer the first question first. It really depends on the program on what our success rates are. And what I mean by that is we have a number of different programs, including our outpatient substance abuse program, our housing program. We do a workplace readiness training program. We also have sort of a workplace readiness economic development program, and our success rates vary by program. For example, one of the programs that would be part of what we would use this is in our construction training program. We have a success rate and a retention rate, actually, which we think is pretty important in employment, of closing in on 90%. So it really depends on which program we're talking about. And I'm certainly glad to go. I mean, I would probably go beyond 3 minutes to go by each program and its success rates. With our housing programs, we've had an incredibly high success rate with our VA program. I don't have the percentage right off the top of my head, but we typically have outpaced all the requirements for the transition in place program. So I know that that's a little bit broad of an answer, but we do serve about 1,000 clients in multiple programs annually in Pinellas and Pasco County. So that's the first question. As far as experience, I mean, with looking even just to the programs that we are, trying to use the ARPA funding for. I mean, we've had a housing program that's gone now for about 8 years, where we've worked with people. We took over what was an apartment complex, converted to a motel, converted back to an apartment complex. And we've been doing that for almost 8 years now. As far as our other programs, we've been around really technically since the late 80s. We've been, for example, outpatient substance abuse. We score in the high 90s on our annual evaluations, and we've been doing that for about 15 years. Our workplace readiness programs have gone on for probably 10 to 12 years. So in terms of experience, we've got pretty significant experience throughout our leadership through all the different programs that we have.
Robin, were you specifically talking about the team leadership as it relates to the construction project?
Yes, thank you for relating that. And my addition to that particular question is that there wasn't a lot of details for cost information on the projects. So I know you've elaborated on a lot already, but if you can share those 2 bullets, that would be terrific.
Okay, so specific to the construction, we're partnered with the Florida Dream Center in Cleveland Construction. A lot of people know Steve Cleveland, who's their executive director, but we've partnered with them on our construction projects, as well as G2 Design, who's our architect and oversees that part of it. They've been in this community probably for about 20 years, in Cleveland construction longer than that. So as far as that goes, and then in terms of specific details, I guess I don't have the ability to share my screen, but we have a pretty substantive formula on the number of houses, the cost of each house, how we're going to use the 4% LIHTC tax credits. I know Sean Kennedy's on. Sean, do you want to elaborate a little further on that? Or maybe.
Hi there. Sorry, was muted there. Yeah, our budget built into each of the cost items under the tiny homes program is, detailed backing up. Most of the planning costs and development costs are estimates from our architect and our general contractor. The financing cost is based on a formula put out by the state for the 4% LIHTC tax credits. I did see on the grading, someone mentioned an uncomfortability funding, paying off bonds. The way that the low-income housing tax credit program works, in order to have access to the tax credits, we're required to take out bonds from them that the state then recommends a broker to turn around and sell those bonds off to provide the financing for the project. So this is financing for the project. The state just requires us to go through that one additional step.
I'm just hoping we've answered your question, because I feel like I'm sort of getting there, but I'm not 100% sure I'm getting there.
Robin?
Right, I'm processing what I just learned. And I'm sorry, because I don't have my entire submission or your entire submission in front of me. I do have my notes. I feel, from what I remember, that the breakdown of the cost for the construction, it was very vague.
Were you talking about the construction on the tiny homes program or the renovation portion of the Continental?
Yeah, I want to say the renovation.
Gotcha.
Okay, well, so the renovation breaks into a couple different categories. And again, I didn't think to have that specifically in front of me, but it breaks down into renovations that we're doing with the food security program with Feeding Tampa Bay, and what we're doing inside that renovation to expand the after school meals and everything else. And that's going to roughly be a little bit more than $300,000. The roof of the biggest things that we ask for in terms of renovation, our housing program's full with a wait list, and we have to replace the roof, which looks like it's going to be, the estimates we got came in higher than they originally were, but they're somewhere between $500,000 and $700,000. And then at the Welsh Plaza in South St. Petersburg, it was a little bit lower, but not significantly lower, roughly in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. Sean, I don't know if you have that right pulled up in front of you.
I have what was in the application and the change order. We are under, I mean, these are projects that are underway right now. So the numbers that are in there are, as far as I know, not really estimate. They're real costs that have been incurred by our general contractor.
And I think we'll stop there because we're over. There were multiple questions, but we're
Okay,
over
yeah, I was gonna ask who's keeping
I'm
track
keeping
of time. You're keeping
and-
track, Duggan?
Yeah, and what we can do too is if you want, we can pop up, David can probably pop up, or I could pop up the application. So we could look maybe at what Robin's looking at specifically, and then if you have another question on that, we could ask a specific question to it too.
Is there any other questions? I have one. How was your general contractor, which is MGRM, how was that party selected?
Our general contractor is Hodge. The roofing contractors, we submitted multiple bids. The general contractor, Hodge, went through the CDBG process, so it was competitively bid out now a few years ago. But so they won the process through CDBG.
Okay.
Let's have a question.
Yes,
the numbers on success rate, I think Robin asked about that, and I'm not sure, Michael, I guess, what's the ratio on success? Is that recidivism? How are you measuring? What is that?
Honestly, it really depends on the program. In some programs, it's recidivism. For example, in our workplace readiness programs, we mainly do work with a lot of people who might have a background, but we do work with people who don't. So we're going to look at 3 month, 6 month, 9 month, 12-month retention rates. Are they, earned? What are their earnings at the time of placement versus their earnings at a 3, 6, and 9 month interval? So it really just depends on the program. We're an outpatient substance abuse provider, so we're going to look at, relapse a little bit differently versus recidivism. So it really just depends on the program.
Thank you.
All right.
What are your plans to repay the bonds if you do not have the ARPA funding?
And we'll probably do it somewhat as a fundraiser, or we will then use general revenue to start bond payments. I mean, that's really our backup plan. We do have another option as well, which is we've already have a tentative, possible agreement with the Florida Community Loan Fund to borrow the money and do a project that way, completely different financing. And they've committed up to $5 million in what we're asking for. So,
and to add to that, repayment of the bonds will mostly come from the rent that's paid by the tenants in the building. If we go the route of the Florida Community Loan Fund, it just changes the mixture of what percentage of affordability on them. Some of the previously 60% AMI units may have to be 80% to break even on that.
And I was going to say the same thing. I mean, the difference for us is that, where we will have more flexibility on AMI is if we're able to pay the bond payment versus having to pass that on to the tenants in rent.
And I think David, I was going to say, I think David has the application.
He has the application up.
Mm-hmm.
So I did skip to the bids themselves, or that's the plan set. Is there a specific part there was confusion about?
It looks like at the end of all the bids is the summary and budget total, and that might help. All the way it's color coded, if that helps. There you go.
And that would have been the sheet that I would have printed out. So that's pretty, pretty good summation of everything that we accumulated on this.
Robin, you're on mute.
My apologies. I'm saying thank you for sharing that.
Do we have any other questions or comments for PERC? Okay, thank you, Michael. Sean?
Thank you very much.
Okay. You know what? I did not follow the agenda. I followed the ranking. I apologize if people are waiting. The agenda is in alphabetical order, and I was following the rank list. So I'm going to continue to follow the rank list unless people have any problems with that.
Nope, that sounds right.
It's very helpful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. The next is the Shirley Proctor Puller Foundation. They have requested $37,768 for carpet replacement. Any questions or comments?
No questions, Madam Chair.
I have just one comment. The way that I understood, the lowest bid was less than the grant request. Could we get some clarity on that and whether the grant request can be less than the requested 37,000? I interpreted the low bid to be 21,264.
Is there a representative here?
Yes. Hi, this is Bridget Heller from the Shirley Proctor Puller Foundation speaking. And just to clarify, you're correct that the lowest bid was less than the grant request. We gave several reasons for not wanting to go with the lowest bid, largely because the person was not nearly as detailed as the other bid. And so we put in estimates for things that we felt that she left out. And the second reason was that we felt that the responsiveness of the second vendor was much better. And so we wanted to go with that second vendor. And so that is the reason why we went with the higher bid as opposed to the lower bid. They pretty much leveled out once we included the things that were not included in her bid, in the first bid or the low bid but were included in the higher bid. The second thing is we did build in, I think it was a 10% contingency just for things that, we might need along the way. And certainly there is an opportunity for the final numbers to come in below what we've estimated. And obviously we are only going to submit receipts for what we use.
Thank you for that. The new flooring for sure will be welcome, improved safety and environment. But thanks for that clarification.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Heller?
No.
Thank you, Bridget. All right, we're moving along. African Peoples Education and Defense Fund.
We have to make a quick correction to this slide as the organization is correctly indicated. Just 1 second.
Okay.
We'll take about 2 minutes.
Do we want to go to the next one and come back?
Sure.
Is that okay, David? Can you, or you need to focus on this?
Oh, no, I can have it open in the background and we can come back.
Okay. The next one is Brookwood, Florida. They are requesting $55,000. And this is for fire safety, the stairs. Are there any questions for Brookwood or comments?
I have a question. I guess maybe it's to you. Is there, it's the fire marshal, right, that dictates standards across the county?
That's
And
my understanding.
So I couldn't tell reading this. I assume that they've been in communication with the fire marshal, and this work would bring them up to standards of where they wanted to be, but I didn't see any evidence of contact with the fire marshal. Maybe I'm nitpicking, but I was just curious.
Okay.
Having dealt with a fire marshal more than once, it's like not an easy thing.
So representative from Brookwood available? Cheryl Small?
Yes. I don't mean to laugh, but boy, did you hit it right on the head, Tony. Yes, the fire marshal, our building was built in like 1926. And the fire marshal we've had to do a lot of updating in that department. For example, we had to get alarms in the basement so that if there's a fire on the 3rd floor, they can hear the alarm in the basement, you know. And thank goodness the fire marshal did point that out to us. We didn't know that. So then it came to the fire stairs, and they have not been maintained properly, and they've been there for over 40 years. So they want them repaired and brought up to code. Otherwise, they come out every few months and we chat. And otherwise, if we don't get them up to code, they of course will start fining us, and the fines are exponential. And at Brookwood, as you saw, we put most of our money into taking care of our girls and making sure they're safe and comfortable. So we do have 3 refuge cottages on property, and we do fire drills, and they know how to go down those stairs. The inside it's 1927, it's old, and the stairwells are very narrow. So that's why we have to have the outside fire escapes. And we do have a plan where the girls and staff and volunteers will come out those fire doors and then go to their refuge in one of the cottages. So the fire marshal is good with that. But the thing is, the stairs are old and they need to be updated. They don't need to be replaced. So they just need to be repaired. And I sent you the budget for that. And if you have any other questions, that's just basically it. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be non-professional, but when Tony said that, I was like, oh yeah, somebody understands.
I thank you. I just wanted to ensure that there was a conversation going on, and I wasn't certain. So the answer seems to be yes, and that's
yes. It's been going on for a while, and we have also repaired other things. The only thing left is the fire stairs, and that's real important.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for Brookwood?
May I ask, this is Robin, you didn't really quantify the numbers of those served as increasing due to the pandemic. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
You mean the girls that we're getting?
Right. I know quite often associations have seen a surge in the population that they're serving. I was just curious in your organization if you've experienced the same.
Well, yes, mainly because, I mean, we have our same girls, and they were very affected by the pandemic. So they got behind in school and things like that. But we have an agreement with the Department of this DCF that they have asked us to take in more human trafficked girls. So we are now in the process of renovating the rooms, the cottage, and we also have an apartment area on campus in order to take in the more of the human trafficked girls. It's a very special undertaking, and we have partnered with a couple of places, because one of the goals of Brookwood is family reunification. That's one of our goals. We also have group therapy with the families when possible. Brookwood takes the girls that can't go into any other foster care. It doesn't work for them. That's why we have the therapist there. We have 3 therapists. We have a psychiatrist that comes every week. And the human trafficked girls are extremely angry and traumatized. And I'll give you an example. We give bus passes to the girls and we teach them how to get to work and to school and things like that on the bus. And one of the girls that's been there for 8 months just lost her mind. She started crying and no. So then she admitted that she had been kidnapped from a bus and human trafficked. So those are real. I mean, now we have to help her learn how to use transportation. So there's just some real special cases. And yes, we are preparing in 2 weeks, we should have 14 more girls there. And we're getting ready for them. We're making everything nice. We want them to have
Cheryl,
not only,
excuse me, Cheryl, thank you for answering that question. And we
I'm
do
sorry.
have to move on.
I know I have a problem with that as Duggan and David.
Are there any other questions
Those will tell you.
or comments for Brookwood? I have one question. You provided some demographics about your staff, your board. Roughly, what's the demographics of the girls that you serve?
Oh my gosh. I did put it in there.
Oh, I missed it because I went back.
Oh,
I apologize.
I thought I put it in there, but the girls match the staff demographics, and it changes because you know, for the African American girls, if they've been human trafficked and they're going to stay longer, and our Caucasian girls, we have Haitian girls, we have 2 LGBTQ plus girls now. I will be glad to send that along. I'm so sorry. I really thought I put it in the grant. Okay. Did I miss that, Duggan? David?
Well, it may be me, but I thought I went back to look. That's why I had the question.
Well, it reflects our staff. And
okay.
It's about even. We have an Asian girl now. So it just, I don't know what to tell you. I apologize. Okay. And I'll be happy.
You said it's reflective of staff, so I recall that. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Brookwood? Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
All right. We're going back to African People's Education and Defense Fund. They're requesting $67,327 primarily for a generator at their facility. Are there any comments or questions?
I did have a question. When I went through the supplied bids and also the scope of work, I noticed that there may or may not be some additional electrical work that was not included in that would be needed to support the generator. And so I just wanted to make sure that the full scope of work had been bid, and if not, maybe the provided documents were only a portion of a phased project. If someone could clarify that for me, that would be appreciated.
Okay. Sandra Forrest is here representing the applicant. Ms. Forrest, would you like to answer her question?
Yes, thank you. So our primary contractor that we anticipate going with has assured us, and as was written in the bid or in the quote, that this was gosh, how did he put it? The full spectrum, that it was everything from the installation of the generator itself, the modification to the electrical panels. They have promised us that it is all inclusive, and that's what they have conveyed to us. And they are, we did get really great references from them. They were the contractor of record, or the preferred contractor. I believe it was for both the is it Tampa Housing Authority, for a couple of the major municipal entities or major governmental entities in the Tampa Bay area. So based on and we did pursue the direct referrals. We pursued the recommendations that they had. I phoned and verified people on the recommendations that they gave us, that they had just had an excellent experience with them. So based on that, we are confident that it's all inclusive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you clarify with the information and the audit that your board of directors are also your paid staff?
I really apologize. I had not seen these. I see that question in the reviewers, and I had not seen these comments until just now. So I know that, and I am a volunteer supporter of the organization for decades now, but some of the financials I may not be exactly up on. Are you referring to Janice Cant?
Hold on just a second. This was in your audit of 2021. This was part of the application, and it was stated that that the 4-member board are also paid staff. This was a notation made by your auditor, and I didn't know whether it's your board still, but you're a volunteer, whether the board is still just 4 members. Has the board been increased, or you may not be able to answer my question.
I don't think I'm able to answer that. I can say that the board is very representative of the community that's being served. I know that the board president had been is born and raised in Pinellas County, and long time is a Black woman, long time both small business owner, and also worked in HR for the city of Pinellas Park for many years, and now is the head of this nonprofit. So I know that the roots, in the community are very strong, and I know that the employees that are actually operating the programs themselves, such as Mr. Eddie Maltzby is a blind Black man who is running the radio station. Really incredible, example of the ability of the programs to raise people up and give people the opportunity to develop and grow. And also employees that work sometimes seasonally or on more of a project base, but in the kitchen as well. Receptionists that are in the office there. So
thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't answer better. I will take back your recommendation here in terms of enhancing the board membership, and appreciate your input on that.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Lithia, I missed that one. But I've noticed there's a couple of the nonprofits that we're going to talk about later where there's close relationships between the board and employment or so. I guess I'm looking to the Pinellas Community Foundation and others to give us guidance. I know that's common in smaller nonprofits, but in some instances it has given me pause also. That one I didn't see, but I do think it's something we ought to take note of. And my assumption, Duggar, is that it will be managed somehow in the contracting pro. Am I correct that it'll be the Pinellas Community Foundation who administers the fund?
That's correct. And yes, it is more common than probably we'd all like it to be in smaller organizations, where you sometimes see boards with compensated folks on them, which I think is why it was raised in their financial compilation. And there were also other pieces of that compilation that mentioned that these are the employment is happening for less than market value is also part of the notes in that compilation. But I think from the notes of this committee to help broaden the board and to bring more people to the board will help mitigate any issues the organization may have going forward. It's certainly worthy of the committee asking the question and digging into that.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Did she leave? Okay. Daystar Life Center. They are requesting $100,000, and these are for earnings to protect their clients as well as service providers that are outside. Are there any questions for Daystar?
I have a question on this one. I noticed that the budget seems to be based on the highest bid, which was 91,000. They also had a low bid of 64,000. So I guess I was just curious if that meant they were going with the high one, or if there was a little, if they're just asking for what they sort of on the high end, but they might not need all of that money.
Okay. So Daystar representative present.
We have a phone call in. If the person listening on the phone, let's see, hold on. On the phone, if you are from Daystar, you can press *9 to raise your hand. Otherwise, I am checking the registration list. There was someone registered, but they are not on. The person on the phone hasn't raised their hands. Again, if you're listening by phone and dial *9 if you're from Daystar, and we can unmute you. Okay. So I guess we would say no one's here.
Okay. We'll move on. Are there any other comments about Daystar while we're here? We'll move on. If someone does come in and we have the time, we'll go back.
I'll keep an eye out.
Okay.
The only question that I did want to explore further, and I also did note the difference between their submission and the low bid, but I applaud them for their diverse volunteers and employees, but I didn't see anything about any community partnerships. And I was
I had that same comment that I refer that to the board. I could not tell it. Reading it, I looked at that a couple of times. That the recipients of the services seem to be very diverse, but the board membership or community context, it was missing. I couldn't tell. I assumed, I probably shouldn't have, I assumed it was absent, but it wasn't in the application.
I've made a note of both of those questions in case somebody comes back later.
Yeah, I got that same note, did not list community partners. So. Okay, let's move on. Florida Dream Center. They're requesting $1.8 million is for a building purchase, and renovation. Questions, comments, Florida Dream Center.
So I have my hand up. I was confused by this application. One, the amount of the month, I noted that they were asking for 1.8 million, which is twice the operating budget, which gave me some pause. Then, as I read it, it wasn't competitively bid. It's a purchase and construction process. It wasn't competitively bid. I heard earlier today that the person who operates who's their CEO, has a significant background in construction, but it's that same sort of small organization where the person who is presiding over the construction is also the CEO, is also a board member, is also, I get concerned about there seeming to be a single source of both policy decisions, management decisions, and execution. So I had concerns about Florida Dream Center, and perhaps someone from Florida Dream Center can answer those questions.
Tony, I share your exact same concerns, kind of the lack of the competitive bids, how they're going to cover material escalations. And there were quite a few things in there that gave me pause as well. I support your comments there.
I had similar comments as well, that it seemed like there weren't recent bids or multiple bids, and it was all the numbers seemed a little unclear to me, even though it seems like a great project. And I think I saw that they don't have insurance, and I wasn't sure how that works. If they're required to have insurance, is this something that they would just get before they undertake this project? Or I guess that's more of a Pinellas Community Foundation question, maybe, is how that will work if the organization.
All right, let's to make it easier for the organization, if they have a representative here, let's just do these questions one by one. We'll start with Tony's. Okay, Miss Zelda O'Connell. Can you talk about, did you hear his question?
I did.
Okay, so let's start there with was there a bid done? Who's in charge? Who's the contractor, et cetera, was what his questions were.
Okay, so within the application, we did explain that our CEO has over 30 years construction experience. He has an active general contract license. He has insurance, and his services would be in kind. So therefore, they would be donated to the project in order for this to process with the most efficient and inexpensive route that we could find. There was insurance up there. It was explained in there, and there was a letter of explanation as to why within the application packet.
Okay.
So
all right.
if I can just
go ahead. You want to follow up? Go ahead.
I think I heard you say he's both the CEO, he's going to act as both the CEO and the general contractor, and there's no compensation. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's an in-kind. There's an in-kind letter of commitment within it.
Okay, well, my question has been answered, but my concern has not been alleviated.
Okay. Michelle what was you can do your question.
Yeah, so mine was along the same lines as Tony's, but also was the insurance. If I missed it in the packet, then I missed it. I'm having trouble pulling up the original documents again, so I can't look for it. But with my notes, I noted that there wasn't any. But if that's my mistake, then I apologize.
Jill, did you have a specific question?
In line with where Tony was headed, as well as Michelle, it's just, I felt like there was the lack of competitive bids didn't properly account for contingencies, address material escalations, and there just wasn't enough detail to support the ask, in my opinion. Where if you've got an in-kind, I think the services of the in-kind contractor is great. I think that's great, but I'm not sure the material and the labor cost and escalation has been properly quantified.
And I think we should probably discuss to what extent you mean by labor. We do have, again, Rotary, National Rotary has submitted $50,000 worth of in-kind labor costs. We also have volunteer time for labor. And we do have some quotes that were done quickly for the large stuff that would need skilled workers. We did try to get more than that. Of course, people are like, unless you're going to give me the job, I'm not going to come down and do it. So we did try to get a roofer. We tried to get someone that's going to cut down the stack. Because this is an old firehouse, so there's a very large stack. So anything that required something skilled, we tried to get as much as we could in the time allotted. Now, that's not to say that if you require us to outbid it with, 90 days advance notice and open bidding and put it in the newspaper, then by all means, we will definitely follow those procedures. What we're talking about for the in-kind hours are the cleanup, the debris, some of the demolishing. We are an adoptive block organization, so we are used to having volunteers. We are used to going out and doing code violations for our elderly in the community. This is not something that is unusual to us. And so when our volunteers heard that we were going to try to undertake something of this sort, they wanted to give extra hours, they wanted to give extra material, they wanted to give extra something. So if you look in the packet, there are letters from Jonathan Brewer at Rotary International where he does commit $50,000, and that's with his group and his Rotary group.
Are there any other questions I have before I ask my questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Robin.
Thank you. A couple of statements. There is no contingency fund that I saw, which is critical these days with having to expedite materials and equipment and inflation costs. My other concern is I did see the in-kind services that were noted by your general contractor. However, I would have preferred to see an outside general contractor present numbers to understand or validate the cost. This is not uncommon in our industry for, and I'm not saying this is a case, but just as an awareness that general contractors may do in kind, but then they beef up the numbers to kind of camouflage the difference. So again, with him being your board member, I don't believe that that's capable, but it would have been great to measure the two.
I understand. Thank you for that feedback.
Any other questions or comments? I want to talk about clarification of the building that you wish to purchase. Was an appraisal done of the building?
Yes.
Can I speak?
Sorry, I wasn't sure you were on here.
Who's speaking?
That is Steve Cleveland,
Okay,
the CEO president of the Florida Dream Center.
all right.
I am the CEO and the president, and we had 2 appraisals done. For one, to answer your question, and the county had 1 done, so there was 3 done. And it was, they all came back after negotiating to 1.2 million, basically just under 1.2 to buy the building. The county recommended to us to modify the building to make it more acceptable to the community, because there's other stuff going on in the community with habitat and apartment complex going on and stuff. So we did go out for quotes. We did. We got quotes from True Line. We got quotes from Stucco. We got quotes from others. And some of the other contractors said, we can't quote this because we don't have drawings. We did submit a rendering that was done by the architect, but until the drawings are done, the block guy, the window gentleman, or the window, whoever we're going to go with, could not give us pricing because it was vague, conceptual. And so that's kind of where we got with this. I mean, I've been with the Dream Center since conception. I've been in business for 40 years, and I've built military bases and hospitals and everything all over the United States and in Florida, mostly in Florida. I'm doing this at no charge and no cost. I'm just using my GC license to save the 15 to 20% markup that another GC would do so that we could keep the price down. All we want to do is get the building and keep serving the community and helping the people that we serve every day in a better building.
Okay, let me go back. When you were talking about the appraisals, you said you got 2.
We had 2, and then the county got a 3rd one. There was 3 appraisals done.
Okay. And then you said after negotiations, you came up with 1.2 million. But what were the 3 appraised prices?
One was over 1.2, and the rest were right at close to 1.2, 1.9.
Okay, thank you.
And we have a contract in the agreement from the county to sell it for that price.
Okay. If for some reason the ARPA funds are not available,
Yes, ma'am.
Has the county requested that you vacate the building if you're not able to purchase it?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Because in your application, there was a line saying without funding, this building will no longer be available. So that was why I asked the question, just to clarify whether they would you would continue to be able to lease the building?
That would be a county question, not my question. I mean, the county is the one that's been working with us for almost a year and a half now, trying to find another building. And then they finally said, let's do this together and make this work in the community.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I guess, Chair, just to elaborate on Tony's real quick, I think the question gets down to, if the CEO is also the general contractor, even though services are being donated, who is the one responsible for supervising and making sure that the work gets done the way it needs to get done? Because that would usually be the role of the supervisor. I think that may be some of the question that the committee has. Who's the independent party that's supervising to make sure what's assigned gets done?
Doug, that is exactly my question, and I'm not questioning anybody's motivations, but when you see that and you're talking about $1.8 million or whatever the numbers are, at some point, someone has to be able to turn to the contractor and say, I want it done this way. And if it's an interesting conversation if it's the same individuals, but I guess I'm pointing out to the foundation that's an area they're going to have to pay close attention to, because they're assuming the responsibilities of the county. And you may know more than I do about this, but the county would have to, you'd have to manage those relationships carefully.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree, Tony, that everything will be done because we have to pull permits. We have to have inspections by, the county. and all the way from the beginning of the inspection, even down to the fire marshal. Everything has to be done correctly so that we pass and we get our CO.
Yeah, I think we're talking about slightly different relationships, but I take your point.
Are there any other questions, comments? Thank you both. Okay, the next is YWCA of Greater St. Petersburg. They're requesting $5 million toward the construction of the Spear YMCA. Are there any questions or comments for the Y?
May I ask, I noted in your submission that the headquarters and project site is not in the QCT zone. However, you support services in the QCT up at 18%. Do you have any plans in place to expand your reach in the QCT zone?
Do we have a representative? Okay. Hello, Michelle.
Hello.
So we have Jocelyn Howard and Michelle Curtis.
Actually, it's Emily Conklin.
Okay.
Emily Conklin and Michelle Curtis. I'm sorry, could you, I was frantically
I'm
trying
sorry,
to.
Jocelyn, you disappeared and I'm looking at this thing and the mind just went off because I saw Michelle. Okay.
I appreciate it. I
apologize,
think
Ms. Curtis.
Oh, that's all right. I appreciate, I think I understand the question. So the question specifically was asking about the location of the headquarters of the YMCA versus serving populations that are in QCT zone. Am I correct about that? So I'm just going to state that the corporate offices of the YMCA are located close to downtown St. Petersburg. The offices house about 25 corporate staff members to include development, marketing, the finance office, executives. The remainder of the YMCA are driven at sites. And so, you know, the Y is a fairly large organization in our community. We presently have over 30 sites that operate on a daily basis, to include 23 before and after school sites, 3 full-time preschools, 2 wellness centers, and 2 community resource centers. And of course, a new YMCA facility being built currently on 62nd Avenue Northeast. And so there are a variety of populations that we serve that operate in QCT zones. I think we tried really hard to specifically identify those as best that we could. We did a lot of data mining in order to give you as an accurate answer as we possibly could with regards to that. I mean, you know, knowing that we serve over 60,000 people a year in our community here in St. Petersburg. I hope that's answered your question sufficiently.
I have, it did. I was just concerned about the 18%. And I do recognize you have those services in many locations, but the 18% out of your current members, I just was wondering if you have plans to expand a further footprint that would bring that percentage served up.
So, you know, interestingly, the location of the new Y is in an area that will allow us to expand that number. That number is obviously not included because those people aren't currently served by us. The community surrounding the property where that building is located, I don't know if you know this, but there is a very high social vulnerability number in several of the populations there. And so we, you know, when the Y was looking at this project a couple of years ago, we identified that there was a real need in the community for the services that the Y provides: affordable childcare, you know, different youth programs, other variety of programs at the Y, before and after school care. And, you know, with COVID, you know, all of those things became greatly exacerbated. So we have seen the need for quality and affordable childcare go through the roof. We ourselves are struggling, to meet the need of that as a huge organization that probably provides the largest amount of childcare in the city of St. Petersburg. I will tell you that we have waiting lists across the board for many of our programs. And so we very early on identified that need in that community. And with COVID, it's become even greater. So, we're really focused on making sure that this new facility meets those needs.
I do have another question, and thank you for that response. Congratulations, or I should say, I'm applauding you for the fact that you're going to be creating 200 jobs. That's spectacular. My question is, in your submission, you spoke of concerns with staffing, that
Yes.
you're currently battling the challenge of meeting your current staffing needs. What is your strategic plan to fulfill those 200 new openings?
So fortunately, or unfortunately, I don't know but your perspective, but those 200 job openings aren't all childcare related. And so, we're going to have staffing needs across the board, operating new facilities. So aquatics directors and, dance instructors and, all the types of staffing that we need for programming at the new YMCA. I'll also say this, we have engaged with our partners in the county, so the Early Learning Coalition, the Juvenile Welfare Board, to try to shore up, the challenges that we're having with staffing. And I will say that, staffing has sort of stabilized for us with rank and file staff, but childcare staffing continues to be a challenge. We are determined to get our compensation and our benefits. I mean, we offer great compensation and benefits already, but it's competitive. There's a lot of people that are trying to hire childcare staffing right now, and it has really impacted us. COVID made that a huge problem for the organization. We've rebounded. I think that's going to get better as time goes on. Our partners, particularly the Early Learning Coalition, have been very determined with us to try to make that a stable environment going forward. But, as most of you probably are aware, COVID changed a lot of things in our world, and, and employment was one of them. And so, we're doing the best that we can. We do not think that we're going to have any trouble staffing our new YMCA. And there's been a huge amount of jobs created just in the process of, developing the project, construction. If any of you have ever driven by the site, it's a very active site at the moment with lots of people all the time working. And so we feel fairly confident that we're not going to have any issues with staffing our new site.
Speaking of one of your partners, what is the status of your action plan with the Juvenile Welfare Board at the Lellman facility?
So we are currently, I believe the release date was this February for the CAP at the Lellman preschool, and we are moving forward. The funding has not been affected for that site, and I will tell you that the challenges with the Juvenile Welfare Board really had a lot to do with ratios and staffing. We really just had a very hard time, keeping our ratios in check at that site. With staffing, and just it really got us upside down with that, to be honest. I think we have a good plan in place. The Juvenile Welfare Board has been extremely supportive of the Y in that process. But
Michelle?
Yes.
I was just going to answer part of that question with the Lellman facility. Some of our challenges have been that grant is very specific, that they fund for the Lellman preschool. It's called a Quality Early Learning Initiative. And so that the teachers are supposed to have bachelor's degrees for preschool. So you can imagine that we are very stuck in a competitive circle with other opportunities out there, even within our own organization and in other programs, our Y Reads programs, depending on pay and all of those things. So sometimes, we have a hard time with finding staff that will qualify under what the Juvenile Welfare Board wants. So if you look at some of our other preschools, we have 2 other preschools, we don't have that issue. And then back to the funding question and the staffing, ELC is helping us to really bolster our work with the preschools by supporting initiatives and giving them opportunities to learn and grow. And through the learning and growing, they are getting stipends and, different bonuses and things that help to keep them engaged with us. They're even getting, if there's longevity, if there is, they take a course on health and safety, different things that they get opportunities. So our preschool at Lellman is challenged really because of the bachelor's degree requirement by JWB. So if you look at the other schools.
So not only do we have to keep it staffed, but we have to keep it staffed with people that have way higher qualifications than our normal, staffing requirements. And so that Alithia, that's really what got us kind of sideways with that whole situation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's have a question.
Yes. Go ahead, Tom.
If I read it correctly, there's something in your application that suggests that you'll use Maximo Elementary School, I think it was Maximo, as a feeder system or as a feeder to the Y on 63rd.
So great question.
I didn't understand tell me how that works.
So it's not Maximo, it's Lakewood Elementary. And so the new middle school that's on the same campus as the new YMCA has been identified as a health and wellness magnet. And so the feeder school is going to be Lakewood Elementary. So the students that are at Lakewood Elementary, and of course, this is not a YMCA thing. This is just a school, this is Pinellas County Schools, but the Lakewood Elementary students are going to be given the first opportunity to attend that middle school because it is Lakewood Elementary, if you don't know, is also a health and wellness magnet. For Pinellas County school system. And so Pinellas County Schools informed us of that decision probably about, 6 or 8 months ago. We really don't have a say in that. However, it makes sense that on a campus that's shared by Pinellas County Schools and a YMCA, that it would be a health and wellness, focused facility or campus, you know what I'm saying?
So okay, what I hear then is it's a handful of students at most, not.
Well, they'll be given the first opportunity. So we don't really know what that number is.
Okay.
And so
they will go through the process and they will apply just like you would apply as a parent to go to Madeira Beach, or you would apply to go wherever. That's my understanding of it, is it will be an application just like all the other fundamental magnet programs. And if you're already somewhere, you may get preference over that. Just like you would get preference if you're a Pinellas County school worker.
Right.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you, Michelle and Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hope Villages of America. They are requesting $248,259. And this is primarily renovation of a facility. Are there any questions or comments?
My only comment is I looked at their audit and I'm not sure what Pinellas Community Foundation requires, but their most recent audit still indicated some weakness in internal controls. And I wasn't sure how the foundation looks at that.
Did Duggan leave?
No,
Oh,
I'm
there
still
you
here.
go. Okay.
I'm still here. And so It may impact how the organization receives funding, whether this would be on a reimbursement basis or prepayment basis for their funding. And that sort of comes into play with some of that. With those, and I think the question also is whether or not how remedied some of those issues are, and that's something the committee may want to dive into.
I have a couple questions.
Okay, Robin.
Thank you. May I ask why they divided the project in two and using two general contractors, where maybe using the same one would offer some sort of, I don't know, volume discount? And my other question is, it didn't mention on the submission, but I wanted to make sure that the organization was aware that in TICO, they do offer a small rebate. Nevertheless, it's money. And that also, with the new system, it is, there is a tax credit for upgrading for a more efficient system. Let's see what else. I think those were my two concerns.
Okay. Linda Perry is here representing the organization. Did you understand her questions?
Yes. So you were asking about why we didn't combine the projects into one contractor. So we did have them bid the different properties individually. One reason was because the food bank location is commercial units. So we did that also separately. And then we wanted to give the opportunity to multiple bidders to be able to receive award of the funds.
Robin, I saw the look.
Yeah, so that's okay. I understand. I didn't really comprehend that one was more commercial, the other one was residential. I want to make sure that you understood about the rebates with TICO and the taxed credit for upgrading the systems. And my last concern is that you mentioned a 30% savings. I know the equipment or the manufacturer equipment will say 30% savings in your power bills. However, there's so many variables. For you achieving the exact 30%, I did want to make sure that you weren't counting on actual operating savings of 30%.
Yes, that's an estimate based on the information that we had researched on just passing on the savings of more efficient units onto the tenants.
And are you aware of the potential tax credits?
Yeah, we'll check into that. Things that I've looked at before, I thought were not applicable to commercial properties.
And I'd be curious as to whether or not Duke Power, Rick, I was about to say Florida Power. Duke Power and TICO operate the same way. They're two different owners, so I'm not sure about that.
Thank you, because I did recognize, had TICO in my brain, and I did look at that, but I also did look at, I believe, Florida Power and Light and Duke, and they do offer very tiny rebates in comparison to what TICO offers, but please still do check into that.
Yep.
Absolutely. If I can also just address the comment about the audit that was made initially.
Go ahead.
For our FY21 audit, we had no material or significant weaknesses noted. So just wasn't sure what specifically you were referring to.
I thought I saw in your response, I'm sorry, maybe I misread it, that you had your maybe I looked at the most recent audit that they were still referring, maybe it was 2020, still referring to internal management weaknesses. And
I think that was from 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have you actually received the $120,000 community development block grant from Clearwater, or is that in the hopper?
Yeah, that the submission is due next week for that, and then we anticipate, at least 30 days from then.
Okay. All right. So you haven't. Okay. Thank you. I wasn't clear on that.
Just one quick question. Based on your bids, you're going to have a little bit of a shortfall, and you do indicate that you have a plan for that gap. Do you have those additional funds in place, or are you planning to get that from this other grant?
The plan would be for that to come from the other grant.
Are there any more questions? Go ahead.
If you don't get that grant, are you able to bridge the difference? Because it looks like the bids came in a little bit higher than you were anticipating.
Yeah, the plan would probably be to, well, number one, increase general fundraising, and then potentially take out a loan, just due to the nature of the units. They're all pretty much failing at this point. So we want to be sure that we've got, you know, units available before the summertime for our tenants.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see what our time is. Okay. Community Health Centers of Pinellas. They are requesting $3.2 million. This will be in a new building, expansion of their building for health, education, and other issues. Questions or comments?
I always hate to be butting in, but
no, go right ahead. You got the expertise in this area. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm not 100% sure, but I do say they have a great architect on board. I would have preferred for them to have received more than just one bid for the cost of the project. And my other concern is there was not really a good detail for me to understand how they would manage the funds when they receive the funds.
I also, Robin, had some concerns about fund management. It appears to me that in order to complete the fund, they had to receive some new market tax credits. Mm-hmm. And if I have that right, that's a very competitive process. So it will take some really nifty handling of the financial flows to make this project come to fruition. So while I was in favor of it, I was a little concerned that this will take some seasoned financial management to complete the project.
It's the representative from Community Health Centers here. Okay, Edward Kucher.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much for giving me time. I will try to address as many questions as possible, and please feel free to ask any additional ones. Number one, appreciate your time, and this is not the easiest project that we ever did, because in the middle of the preparing application and project, we had to change because of architectural needs. However, we based our estimate, yes, and it is an estimate, and in order to explain how it works in our organization, we provide a detailed example of one of our construction projects that currently ongoing, that was started just a few months ago. And we will utilize the exact same process. At this point of time, our RFP is scheduled to be sent out in a week. Before the end of the March, it will go out, our RFP, and we will receive all the proposals, and absolutely will go through the thorough proposal evaluation work with our established team. Our overall team that will participate in it includes approximately 9 people. It has representation of our board, and after proposals reviewed and evaluated, they go to our board. As far as financial management of the project, you're absolutely right. New market tax credits is a serious and competitive process. We have a strong experience in it. We currently already managing one new market tax credits project. We are working closely with Florida Association of Community, with Florida Community Loan Fund. We already have preliminary agreement on new market tax credits being provided to us. We doing a parallel finalization with them, but we have all pieces necessary for new market tax credits, funding, tax credits itself, crediting organization, everything is in place, and we're finalizing paperwork. We're very sure that we will have funding necessary to complete the project. Obviously, we have $1 million of federal funds that already in place in the bank and can be dispatched at the point that we will need it.
Could you, oh, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead. No, go, Christine.
Could you elaborate on the comment that you made about a change in architectural requirement or need?
Yes, originally, you might know our building. We're located just across the street from JWB. It's a kind of interesting building, part of it 2-story, part of it 1-story. Original plans that we renovating piece under that has only 1 story and building 2nd story. A long story short, after architectural evaluations, they said that structure will not support 2nd story. So we had to turn around and change the project by adding, God bless, property allows us. We just received a couple days ago on March 2nd conditional use approval. So we will be able to put our project right now will be renovation of existing 1st floor, piece of existing 1st floor, and building a 2-story building next to it. Project is highly important for us, for the community. Needless to say, in addition to serve at least 5,000 more patients for about 15,000 medical visits, expanding mental health, we will do something really new. First of all, we have numerous educational projects that will allow residents to uplift themselves. It starts from us running medical assistant. We will have right now medical assistant, dental assistants, and pharmacy technician schools. We will have our career academy in there. And in addition, we starting our own residency program that will prepare for family practice physicians a year for our, hopefully, we will convince them that we are the best in the world and they will stay with us, because we definitely need folks. So this project is aiming to meet 2 maybe major demands in community: health and employment. And yes, in addition, it will create 18 additional jobs, at least.
Before we move on to the next question, I want to make sure, Tony, did you get clarification about the fund management issue?
Yes, I'm pleased that they have some experience in the new market tax credits. I still think it's one of the vulnerabilities of the projects for the foundation to think about. It's a competitive process, but my question was answered.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm a little confused. Have you hired a general contractor or not?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Our bids for RFI goes out according to the project plan before the end of this month.
Okay, well, what was the information that was provided by Spring Engineering
sample of our Spring Engineering as our architect. They provided information on how process works and provided sample of how it actually just was done for another project.
Okay, because what I read, it looked like they had solicited and received 5 bids for a general contractor.
My apologies, it was an example from our Milton Park project that currently in progress.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, my apologies. Due to the change in nature of project, we were not able to provide actual bids because we're trying to be rigorous in our process and do step by step as it's supposed to be done.
If I could ask a question, then how did you go about substantiating the ask of 3.197 million then? Because I appreciate the clarification because I saw the 5 bids too and things weren't adding up. But how do you quantify the 3.197 million ask? And I know your schedule indicates that your drawings are to be ready for in March. Is that on schedule? And I don't know, I'm having a tough time sort of connecting the dots on the grant ask and sort of the status of the project from a planning perspective.
I appreciate you asking. So if I can clear it, project is in accordance to our project plan right now. Application, we have architect in place, we have plans that were prepared and submitted for design complete and submitted for permits. This request for permits goes to the county within the next week or so. We also put in out RFP, publishing RFP at the same time. So we expect that permits will be received in April or May. Our RFP is scheduled to be received back on April 10th. And we plan to do selection on April 15th and planning groundbreaking somewhere in end of May, June timeframe. As far as financing, again, just doing a couple projects currently. One is in progress. Our architect had assist us with creating a preliminary budget for the project. Originally, when we originally put LOI together, idea was that will be balance of the project. However, right now we have slightly bigger project. We had to expand it because, again, as I explained, architectural limitations of the current building. So difference will come from the new market tax credits.
Any other questions or comments for community health centers?
Only thing, if I can just add that we completed 4 large construction projects within the last 2 years, despite of COVID and everything else. Our team is highly experienced, and we have a person of 29 years of construction experience as our facilities director who will be managing the project.
Thank you very much. I have that it is 2:40. Why don't we take our break now before we start the next one? Let's 10 to 15 minutes. What was your plan, Dougie?
Maybe 5, if that's all right.
Okay.
So we stay on.
A stretch break. Okay.
Thank you.
Go refresh and come back in 5. I got I'm still on my smoothie.
And Madam Chair, just as we
Yes.
start up again, to make sure that we have enough time to get through all of the applicants, we're just going to ask applicants and remind them to please answer the question that's asked, not to offer additional information, just answer the question, and also contain your answer to that question. That will help us get through this as quickly as possible. And give enough time for all the rest of the applicants that we need to review today to go ahead and answer the questions that the committee may have for them. We may end up muting you or ask you, our staff may jump in and ask you to stop if you're answering questions that just don't pertain to the question that was asked.
Okay. Is everybody back? All right. Gulf Coast Jewish Family Services. They're requesting $2.4 million. This is another major building renovation. Are there any comments or questions for Gulf Coast?
From what I commented in regard to the project, the architectural proposal was the only contributing cost in developing budget, and that the contractor had not been selected yet. So just wanted clarification on where the what the phase of the project is currently and when the contractor will be selected.
We have a representative from Gulf Coast.
Yes, hi, this is Elke Cumming. I'm VP of Programs and Administration. The project design is now at 80% of design. We cannot bid it out until it's completely drawn. We're anticipating that within the next 2 weeks, we'll be finalizing the mechanical overlays on that. We did get the quote through our architects, WJA. They have a construction arm, so we were pretty confident in the numbers that they were providing because they have current construction numbers based on their businesses.
Any other question, comments? Well, that was a quickie. Thank you very much. Okay. Homeless Empowerment Program. They're requesting $423,600 for HVAC renovations. Questions, comments, or help?
Could a representative of the organization provide clarity in regard to the grant amount that was requested that did not seem to be in line with the wide variety of the bid that was provided, which was between $288,000 and $450,000?
Okay, Ashley Lowry is representing HEP.
I'm here. I also have our head of building and grounds, Jeff Zychek, on the call. He's the one that actually collected the bids. Duggan, if you could unmute him, he's the best representative to speak to this specific question.
Great. He's set up and he can speak.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Jeff, are you there?
He is unmuted.
I'm going to try and call him. I'm sorry.
It looks like he's muted on the screen. Hello?
No.
Okay, for the sake of time, we'll come back when he's on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Unitarian Universal Church. Recommendation of the little, they're requesting $72,000 for renovation of the Little House. Any questions or comments concerning their proposal? I think this one is similar to a question you raised earlier, Tony, about the proposal. My question is, who is responsible for selecting the general contractor?
And I echo, there's a couple of them like that, and you were correct. I have the same concern about this project. Once again, recognizing they're small nonprofits, but
Right.
May I respond?
Yes, you may.
Oh, thank you. So you were asking about how we will select the winning GC,
Yes.
and that is that we have the team, the leadership team, consisting of the president, treasurer, Reggie Craig, who is a very experienced GC and a member of UUSP, and myself, and we will make the decision.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, it appeared that Mr. Craig also submitted a proposal.
He did submit a proposal, yes. I included that plus 2 additional proposals. I just wanted to see the gamut of estimates.
Okay. So is his proposal being considered?
It's being considered, but frankly, including Reggie, we really thought the 2 additional one source and Northeast were very exciting. The people who came on site had ideas. You could just see that they immediately could picture what they would like to do there. So we felt very good about those 2 options.
and I guess I should just note that my concern earlier, in case it was missed, was that there's a relationship there where you end up, if you are both board, management, and contractor, it's a difficult relationship. So I don't know if you heard that, but I just wanted to point it out. That causes me concern.
Oh yeah, and I would not be eager to do that too. And honestly, we really submitted it to show. I was concerned. It took quite a while to get our responses from a request for proposal. So I do understand that, and we recognized Reggie as a possible related party. However, that is not our preferred route.
My question is, according to your submission, you serve 9% in one zip code in the QCT and 2% in another zip code in the QCT. Do you have any strategic plans to grow the reach within the QCT community?
So I'll just answer frankly as a volunteer for Friday nights. And so the best outreach is actually within our population. So our guests, it's word of mouth, and they vote with their feet, and that's how they come to us Friday nights. I don't know a satisfactory response to that, except that's my experience. You know, they're transient, they're mobile, they're coming from all over. They've got a routine. A lot of people, some work in the area, some actually have some shelter, but not too many. And, you know, they go to the library, the Sunshine Center, and then they come to us for dinner.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Does your grant request cover the cost, or do you need some additional funding? And if so, do you have a source for that?
We do not believe we will need additional money. We have had frank conversations with the proposers that this is funded purely by a grant. We are not in a financial position to invest in these capital projects, and that's why this means so much to us, because it would not be possible without this grant.
One more question, please. With the 3 bids that were submitted, I could not read bid 3, despite the fact I tried many ways. Can you explain to me how that compared to bid 1 and bid 2, where there was a significant difference?
Oh my good gracious, I am so sorry about that. I didn't, okay. So there is not a significant difference. Well, the only difference is that one had an architect who was envisioning more than our grant can actually do. But we have some very basic things that need to be accomplished. And I don't know why the cost was so different, but you know, I don't know, different experience with access to supplies, materials, labor. may influence that.
Could you, since she wasn't able to see all the bids, could you just share what the 3 bids were, please?
Sure. So one was from Northeast GC, one was from One Source, and then one was from RCMC. RJMC, so sorry.
May I ask how the cost with RJMC related to Northeast GC and OneSource?
Can you add to that question? I don't know, in terms of when you say related.
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, one bid was higher, and you explained about the architect drove the higher cost, and then you had another bid, and I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me. And the third bid, I couldn't read at all. So I have no clue where the total cost fell as it relates to the other 2 pricing proposals you received.
I'll just take a stab at this and tell me if I should change or go in a different direction. So I know that RJMC was, I believe it was 82. And so that was out of reach for us. I put that in for comparison. And in terms of OneSource and Northeast, I believe that Northeast was 72,000 on the nose. Please correct me. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, and so then we had OneSource in between the 2.
Which was 77,560.
Right. And so
I'm sorry, Northeast was 77,560 and OneSource was 72,000. I got them reversed.
So that's okay. Okay, so I mean, it's a good range. And I was appreciative of RJMC just to give us comparison, just to understand what is reasonable.
Okay, thank you. Robin, your question was answered?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Could I just add to what Sabina was saying earlier about outreach in the population we serve, which is by definition a transient population that doesn't necessarily identify with the zip code, but we know that they are residents from the surrounding areas. And
thank you. We've had that question has been answered, but thank you very much. We have to move on to additional questions.
Are there any other questions for this applicant? Thank you very much. Okay.
We're able to go back to HEP now.
All righty. So we're back on homeless empowerment program.
And the question that was asked was for clarity. There were wide variability in the bids that came back, and trying to reconcile that with the amount of the grant that was requested.
That's correct. And one of the bids I was unable to read because of the way it was uploaded. So the question is the wide range in your bids, and perhaps be helpful if you state all of them and exactly what's the issue between them and where are you headed?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Zychek. I'm the project specialist at HEP. Sorry for the technical difficulties earlier. I appreciate the time here. The wide range of bids, it was kind of surprising to us as well, but the lowest bid from Garland Air, they're probably the smallest company. And I was very surprised at their price. I don't think they include mechanical drawings or anything like that. And then the highest bid was the largest company, and they provided us with more of a budget, and they wanted to leave room for going back and actually refining their numbers. The middle bid from RDK was probably the most comprehensive if you look at the details in that bid. And we based our budget on that with a contingency and rounding up a little bit on their numbers in each of the categories, because their numbers were also estimates, like when it came to permitting and mechanical drawings and stuff like that. So I think hopefully that answers your questions. I can answer any other questions regarding that if you have follow-up questions.
Any other questions for HEP? Okay, thank you very much. We will now move to the ARC Tampa Bay. No, I'm sorry. West Care Gulf Coast. They're requesting $1.5 million. Are there any questions for West Care? This is a building renovation.
Yeah, I am still a little unclear the relationship between West Care and Fitz House and how it all sort of interplays with each other, and I guess I just would love to understand more about that relationship.
Okay, do we have a representative from West Care? Okay.
Hello, this is Rhonda Lieberman.
Mm-hmm.
Fitz House is our facilities and contract part of West Care. They do all of our, they oversee all of our facilities, and they'll do the initial quotes for contracts like, or for applications like this, and then we go out and bid for the actual work to be done. Fitz House does not do the work for us. They oversee all of our properties. Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you. I appreciate that.
Are there any other questions, comments?
May I ask, with the renovation and the projection of new services, what do you anticipate projection-wise on the revenue you'll be gained from that, and also the number of additional clients that you would be serving?
Okay, with the renovation, we are currently, we do a social detox, and the renovations will allow us to do a more medical detox. So we'll be able to enhance our services and be able to get funding in to do those services. And I don't know the exact number of clients that we would be able to reach, because right now we're reaching like 700, 800 clients a year with the social detox. So with the medical detox, that'll help keep out of the hospitals and things of that nature. They can come to us for that. So I'm not exactly sure how many new clients will be seeing.
And one last comment, I didn't see a timeline for the permits. Just heed caution that they're running generally quite long these days. I want to be sure that you check in with the county officials so that you can appropriately make decisions moving forward.
Yes.
Will the Turning Point program continue to operate during the renovation?
Yes, we will be able to continue. It will be done in sections, and if things are like, and when the kitchen is being renovated, we will have another program bring food into our into the Turning Point from one of our other programs. So there's all of the construction can be done around the program, so that will not be affected.
Okay, and what is your timeline for selecting your general contractor?
It would be within the 30 days of receiving the award notice.
So you have someone picked out?
Fitz House works with several different contractors. We're working with contractors right now with the with grants through Pinellas County and City of St. Pete. So we do have some contractors that do work for us.
Any other questions?
I have just one question. Is the budget that's provided, is that a guaranteed maximum price so that when you go out to bid, you're assured that it's going to stay within that budgetary number? Or do you have to account for market volatility with your bids and things like that?
I'm going to say market volatility, volatility is going to be in there, but we are real close. Fitz House does a pretty good job of getting the prices and accounting for that. So it should be close.
So Fitz House is committed to doing it for the budget that they quoted you?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. The ARC Tampa Bay. They're requesting $330,796. All right. Are there any questions or comments for ARC?
I do have one question. Their revenue stayed up during the last few years, but they had to close housing and services. So my question is where did those funds go? Do they have a capital improvement piece where that extra cash flow went to? It wasn't clear for me anyway.
Hi, this is Carolyn Reginelli from the ARC Tampa Bay. Could you repeat that again a little bit?
Sure. With reviewing your statements, I noticed that your revenue stayed pretty good throughout the whole COVID scenario, but you did close housing and some services because of COVID. Correct. My question is, where did those funds go if you had less operating costs during that time frame? Some of the savings, so to speak.
Okay, because we had less operating costs, we also had a lot of staff vacancies, positions that weren't filled. And then when we closed a lot of the programs for COVID, we consolidated. So in essence, what happened there was that we ended up not having to use as many overtime staff positions because we were consolidating a lot of programs.
But
and I'll let Brian speak as well.
Okay, hi, this is Brian Syracuse. I'm the executive director. Thank you for having us. So we did pretty well with making sure that we did our best to keep our some of the money coming to us, but unfortunately, as Carolyn was talking about, we did need to increase all of our staffing. So when we serve people in a adult day center, the staffing is a lot different than when you're at the group home. And so during the pandemic, we had to serve most of our individuals in the group home. So we had to increase staffing at each location, which then created an increase in all of our staff numbers, or excuse me, our overall budgetary towards staff. So that's where a lot of the money went. So an individual that could be in a larger facility, that there's other staff to respond, because we do have some very challenging behavioral individuals we serve here, that it ends up making it where you don't have to staff it as much. But when we went out to the group homes, that's where a lot of our expense went. And then also during that time, there was also an increase in some of the challenging behaviors, because people were not as able to go out in the community. And so our staffing had to increase a little bit more, just for the safety of the individuals we serve.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Could you provide a status on the current project? It seems like there are several architectural bids that were provided, all with their own cost proposal. So where are you in the process of selecting that?
We did complete the review of the bids from the architects. Our property committee went through those bids and proposals. So we did select Stephen Fowler, who has experience working in the Long Center. He's done several projects here. So right now, we've executed the contract with Mr. Fowler, so he will proceed with developing the plans. And once we get those plans ready from him, we'll be able to put together an RFP for general contractors.
And did he provide you a timeline for the final plan set for that?
We kind of told him it might depend on the status of this application, because if we get approved for funding, we'll be able to proceed more quickly. However, if it's not approved for funding, we'll do what I told him. It's a slow roll. So start off with the schematics, and then hopefully fundraise off of the schematics, and then go from there.
Thank you.
In your application, your data, you said that that half of the ADT clients had not returned. And I want to know, is this decrease completely related to your new COVID protocols or something else?
It's multiple factors. A lot of the individuals that didn't return, we've reached out to them to try to get their response on bringing them back into the program. We had some that are deceased that did pass away. We've had some that transferred out or went to other programs. But on the plus side, there is a waiting list with APD. So we continue to do intakes with new individuals that, would like a day program service. So right now, we're probably at a net loss of 25 clients compared to where we were prior to COVID. So we're close. We've brought back pretty much around 75 individuals that either were here or are new individuals to our agency.
And do you take clients throughout the region? And the reason for my question is that when you talked about your need, you talked about the region and the state, but you did not speak specifically to Pinellas County.
I'll attempt to answer that, and if Brian has further information. As far as we serve individuals that are funded by the Agency for Persons with Disability. Our region is the Suncoast region. So when we have tried to get information on the Suncoast region wait list, it's several counties. So it's around 4,000 in our county or in our region. So we don't have specifics as far as Pinellas County, but the Suncoast region is Pinellas, Pasco, Hillsborough, Hernando, maybe a few other counties. So we don't have specifics on Pinellas County, but we do try to get that information from APD when it's available.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is the studio at 620. They requested $184,600 for building renovation. Are there any questions or comments?
I just reiterate the comment I made earlier about contractor board relationships.
Mhm. Any other questions?
I do have one. I know that they plan on buying the building from the landlord, but I didn't note any point that it is a guarantee it will happen. The repairs definitely help that case, but what if the landlord decides not to sell or the purchase doesn't go through?
Do we have a representative?
Yes. Corlett.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So to answer the question about the building purchase, it's currently owned.
Can everyone hear her?
Barely.
Yeah, we can barely hear you, some of us.
Okay, I'll try to speak up a little.
That's better.
Okay, good. So the building is owned by the studio at 620 LLC. So our landlord is a group of donors who purchased the building when the studio was founded in 2004. So these individuals have been longtime supporters of the studio, and I don't anticipate any challenge with regard to them going forward with the sale. Like, it's something that's being discussed between these LLC members and our board of directors at this time. And, you know, many of the LLC landlord people are looking to donate their shares of the building to the organization because it was always, the purchase was initially a act of charity, if you will. So while some of them, yes, of course, have made a profit or will hope to make a profit on their investment, the purchase and sale of the building away from the LLC to the studio as a nonprofit, because it's such close relationships, it almost seems, I know it seems like a conflict. I totally hear what you guys are saying there, but from our side, it seems like a non-issue because everyone is on the same team here. So.
Thank you. I noted that your headquarters not in the QCT area, nor is the project. What intentions or planning do you have in place to bring in residents of the QCT area?
Yeah, we're very close. We're adjacent, I would say, QCT adjacent. We do service a lot of the population in the Midtown area that fall within those boundaries. We partner closely with some of the Pinellas County schools in that zone and do a lot of student work with and just with residents in general in those neighborhoods. So although we aren't directly there, we definitely have participation from individuals in that zone. So
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Volunteers of America of Florida. They're requesting $748,300. For their project. Are there any questions or comments?
The only thing I saw that was a bit of a concern is that the amount requested seems much larger than the actual impact of the pandemic. pandemic. And also, I wasn't really comfortable without the proof of 3 bids from a GC. The schedule is not detailed, or is it realistic? They don't really mention supply chain issues or how they will manage around time delays, or actually how they're going to successfully renovate all 36 units in a 6-month period. I would like to learn a little bit more about that.
I concur with Robin's concerns about project impact. I believe it was 63 for $750,000.
Yep. Okay, is there a representative from the organization? Okay, did you understand the question? Do we need to restate it?
Hi, this is Stephanie Branich. My colleague, Vice President of Development and Housing, is actually on the call as well, Travis Brown. He would be best to answer that question.
Okay.
There we go. It looks like I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you guys for considering our project. I guess the first comment going to, I guess I can address the 3 bids. We use the contractor to kind of, as a, not, exactly a design build, but to help us come up with the scope of work and the costs. So we've used this contractor before in the past. So we kind of give them, we do our due diligence. We've worked with them for several years. If that's a serious concern with the group, we could go back to putting it out to 3 bidders, but we've worked with him for several years and feel confident that he has very competitive prices. He does bid out some of the sub work to numerous subs, so we do have some competition there. Going into the time frame, I mean, we've worked with the contractor as part of this application. So there's really, if you look at a lot of the items, they're not going to require a full permit set. So the timeline is going to be a lot quicker. We are using an architect, Sofarelli, to help us with quality control on the construction. So we just finished a rehab of 32 units in Tampa, and it was a similar time frame. So we feel, I mean, we can't control the COVID delays, supply chain issues, but we would immediately, if we got funded, I'm sure there'd be a little kind of underwriting time frame. We would immediately start ordering materials. Even if it was closer to the end of the 6 months, we could order them and put them in, get them ordered in, so that we're avoiding the supply chain issues either in a storage facility or on site. And if you look at the scope of work, it's not, what you would say is a full rehab. So a lot of them have to do with kind of, will not require relocation. You're looking at the exterior doors, gutters, the flooring will be tough, but AC units, exterior plumbing shutoffs, security lighting, water heaters, the kitchen cabinets and the flooring will probably be the most intensive. But again, we feel confident that we can get it done in that time frame.
Any other questions?
Yeah, it seems like I might have missed one. Was there one in that group that I did not answer?
Did you get all your questions?
I think it's a question about the proportionality between the amount requested and the COVID impact. I think there was $130-something thousand quantified COVID impact for related to this project. So I think there's just someone on the committee asking to reconcile that with the amount requested.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough thing to fully quantify, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely an impact. I mean, COVID, less apartment inspections, less face-to-face, more deferred maintenance. And we all know the cost of construction has gone through the roof. So I think a lot of that is inflation. as well as, other things that are more operational and rent loss and that kind of stuff. So, it's a hard number to put an exact on it, but there's definitely been an impact, and we've seen it throughout the entire portfolio. It's just harder to hire people, harder to get materials. Everything costs a lot more. It's tough right now, even though we're 3 years past it.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services. They are requesting $82,000 for their project. Are there any questions or comments?
Well, I thought in their submission that they did not define the negative impact of COVID. They just focused on inflation. And they didn't really talk to the reduction in revenue or increased demand served based on COVID. Let's see. And yeah, is the renovation gonna bring in more clients where they are servicing more people? And thank you.
Yeah, and I had sort of a related question as well, like what was your loss in client fees? They talk about it. So is there a representative from Clearwater Neighborhood Housing? Yes, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. This is Frank Fournier, the CEO of Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services. Thank you all. I know it's been a long meeting, a long call, so I will try to be brief. We did experience both a loss in revenue and a loss in clients and client fees. For 2020, we lost over $62,000 in client fees and ended the year negative $44,000. COVID, the pandemic obviously had an impact on what it is we do, because we're all about affordable housing, homebuyer education, counseling, all types of housing counseling. So there was certainly an increased need for rental assistance, utility assistance, eviction prevention, and counseling. So we saw a huge uptick in all of those areas because people could not keep up. They couldn't work. They didn't have the income, and as a result couldn't pay for rent and mortgage payments. So we did see an increase in demand on all of those fronts, and did again experience a decrease in revenue and client base because we couldn't provide services to them as well during that time.
Are there any other questions? I was looking at my notes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Neighborhood Care Network. Are there any questions or comments? They are requesting $750,000 to purchase or rehab a facility.
I would like some clarity in this application to define or to state whether or not the site that they need for this construction has been purchased, because that does have a great impact on the survey and of course the final construction of the building.
Okay. Susan McIntyre is here from the agency.
Hello. I just got notice from David Lamarca, our executive director, that he just got kicked off the call or disconnected some way. So your question was, has it been purchased? And no, it has not.
And so are there land opportunities that are being surveyed currently? And if they are, what are their status?
We've had more conversations with the property that we described in this application. But at the same time, until that is confirmed, we're still looking at other suitable sites.
Are those potential sites some that may include existing structures that will that will inform whether or not the scope of work needs to be changed?
In a word, yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
May I ask your structure within your organization and how the project will be managed, including the recipient of the funds and how they will be managed?
Well, we'll manage the funds as we manage everything else. Hold on one second, if you would, that's David. David, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you put me on your speaker?
Yes, so now you are on speaker. Can we get that question again about who'll manage the funds for the building project? Did I miss anything in that question?
Well, I really didn't understand I needed clarity on your leadership. Who's going to manage the project from a process from beginning to end? And when you receive the funds, or if you receive the funds, how they will be managed internally?
Well, internally, for the most part, I built probably 5 buildings and in different CEO roles, and so I'm going to oversee most of that with the GC from the construction company. I have full confidence in them. We worked with them on other projects. We've just renovated a building in South St. Pete, and with great success, under timeline and under budget. And I think, no reason to think we wouldn't do the same thing on this, because this is going to be even an easier project, even though it's larger in scope and scale. It's still from renovations are far more invasive, basically, than something that's starting from scratch.
Are there any other questions? In your application, you mentioned that you sold your building in 2020.
Correct.
How much did you sell it for, and are any of those funds remaining?
Oh, we lost significant money on that. If you knew Neighborly's history, Neighborly, prior to my arrival in 2018, Neighborly built this building 10 years ago, which had a mortgage note of over $50,000 a month on it. We sold the building just to get out of our debt. That was the only thing. We were upside down significantly. So we were able to get out of it with little long-term impact on our fund balances. So we've been able to go from a owning building where $50,000 a month to a renting scenario at $12,000 a month. And our hope now is to get to a position that we'll save $150,000 a year for the next 50 years for Neighborly. And this is probably the best thing we could do to impact services, and for us to affect the 1,200 people on a waiting list for a meal, or 150 people waiting for a day of daycare services. We'll be able to impact them by not spending money on fixed costs. And that's our proposal to the state appropriations. And they've looked favorably upon that kind of decision, because this will have a long-term impact on the future of services for us.
And has your lease been renewed, or was it renewed?
Lease, yes, we have we just signed, starting in January, a 2-year renewal with a 1-year option. So in the event we still were finishing up the last things in 2024, we have the option to go month to month for up to 12 months. But our plan right now is still that we would, by the end of 2024, early into 25, but more likely end of 24, we would be into a new space, and again, positioning us well for the future. Are
there any other questions? comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, we made it through the 19. I'm going to turn it back over to staff so they can go through the chart that they have provided us concerning our rankings and how the funding looks right now.
So I'll pop it up just to explain the two lines real quick, because we also had some questions. That the dotted line is where there is full funding available completely. If you follow, if you all choose to follow the ranked list exactly, there's full funding up to here. And once you hit below the dotted line, it is partial funding. Once you hit the solid line, there is no more funding.
And how much is it at the dotted line?
It is 7.5 million approximately.
Okay.
And just as a heads up, the budget total is 10.5 million, or 10.5 million. There was 10 million initially budgeted, and there is 500,000 for indirect costs. That was, applicants should have put that in their total amount requested.
Right. Okay. Well, let's have some discussion. This Q&A session was very helpful, answered some questions. What's the pleasure of the body? Do you want to follow the rankings as we completed the applications, or have some issues during this discussion been raised that may want you to change things?
Well, Alethea,
And I'm willing to entertain a motion. Yes, Tony.
well, I have a couple of questions. So I'm going to go back to and I guess I'm asking Doug, and we've talked a couple of times about, and I think it's the Florida Dream Center. Maybe there's another one about people who are have board, CEO, contractor relations, and I don't know if that has any impact, but is Florida Dream Center one of those that has that relationship?
Yes, that was one that you all mentioned, and from that standpoint, I think through our contracting process, we can lock down and make sure that there's proper oversight. There's oversight that comes from the foundation through the process as well. So we can ask for adequate explanations. Who is supervising? What authority do they have if they have disagreement with contractor? And to have an organization sort of lay out a clear process that satisfies any concerns there if the committee desires to fund any of those projects where you had questions about the relationships. And so we can work on that through the contracting process.
So with that said, I'll make my motion would be that we fully fund the 1 through 7. And I guess number 8 would be partially funded with what remains, as opposed to, so fully fund 1 through 7. And if I believe below that dotted line, that would leave approximately 3 million for the YMCA of Greater St. Petersburg. As I understand that project, it's currently under construction and has been for several years. That leaves them a gap to fill, but they seem, of that group up there, they seem the most capable of filling that gap. So my motion would be 1 through 7 full funding, partial funding for 8.
And I would second that motion.
Okay.
I do have a concern. Some of the submissions did not have a large percent in the QCT area as far as servicing the residents. And I would like that to be under consideration, because I thought that this fund was really based on supporting those regions for COVID impact and relief. Can you please share your thoughts on that, team?
So I'll share from the standpoint of how the application was put together. QCT in some ways is a shortcut It's up to you all if you feel that the application outside of QCT really looked at populations significantly impacted by COVID. You could look at that differently. And the QCT is certainly a shortcut to get there, and through ARPA funding that's been looked at as, you know, areas of high need, but the applicant may have explained other ways that they are having an impact on communities that have been severely affected by COVID and its after effects. I think to look at both of those, not just the QCT, but do you feel that if QCT wasn't cited, the applicant has adequately explained how they're going to have a benefit outside the QCT to impacted populations?
Thank you for that. I do have one other, and that is with the top 7, what are the numbers served within those organizations?
Are you asking for the cumulative number? Because each one of them lists in their application, they list an individual number.
No, I meant the individual number. I'm just looking at the overall impact to the number that they serve.
Well, I guess I'm saying that there's, if I have it right, in the report, in the projects, each one has a number. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I mean, if we pull them, I suppose the staff could pull them up, but each one of those people had a number.
Right.
Each project. Do I have that right?
Yes, each one stated the number of people that would be served by the project.
And I remember that. I guess what I'm looking for is the impact of the percent of helping those people that are serviced. Meaning if one fund is only servicing, this is an example, 11 people, is that a good use of the fund money? Because we're only helping 11 people. And is that impactful to the objective of this whole distribution of funds?
Well, I'll speak for myself. That's one of the things I took into consideration. I think I mentioned there was one project that was asking for $750,000 and was only going to impact 63 units. I did not recommend that. And that project's not on here. I don't have in front of me the individual impacts, but for me, that was a criteria, and I made that assessment as I made my recommendations.
And I think also that was also reflected in the weight of the scoring that the committee members attribute. I know I did, as an example, did weigh, even for those organizations that were not headquartered in the QCT, I was particularly interested in whether or not they were reaching members of the QCT and COVID-affected population.
Michelle?
So, yeah, I have, I guess my concern is if we do 1 through 7 and then we're partially funding the YMCA, my main concern with that is that the best use of that remaining money, or would it be better to fund some more projects entirely rather than partially fund the YMCA project? And I mean, for 2 reasons. A, I think it might be better to fully fund another project or 2 instead of partially fund one, but also the YMCA project is going to happen whether we give them the money or not. It's already happening. I don't really know how to adequately account for that, but it doesn't seem like they need this money as much as other people do. And I feel like a little bad saying that, but other people, their projects aren't going to happen if they don't get the money. So I think that's something we need to consider.
Michelle, I actually concur with what you're thinking. I was going to suggest we make a motion that we fund 1 through 7, and then we look at the ones that are below the dotted line, and perhaps consider funding some of those, even if it is partially.
Okay, are you amending his motion?
I'm willing to withdraw it and restate it if that helps.
Yes, please.
I'll withdraw it and state we'll do it in 2 parts or multiple
Second,
parts.
are you withdrawing?
I'm withdrawing and making.
No, I'm asking if you're second withdrawing.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
go ahead.
that's fine. I mean, if where I think Tony is headed is just to deal with the first 7.
Right, I'm just
One motion.
following parliamentary procedures. Okay, Tony, you
Yeah.
withdraw
All
your
right, I
motion. The
withdraw
second
the second.
occurs.
Thank you, Rick. The second withdrawal. So I make a motion that we fund 1 through 7.
I
Okay,
will,
we have a
I will
motion.
second that.
Who was
May I
that?
make a comment about the?
Wait a minute, I didn't
why?
get the second. Who was seconded? Robin seconded. Okay, Gail.
I would like to make a comment about the why, because if you look at the gap between the average scoring on number 9 and the average scoring on number 8, the Y does fall in line. And the Y, while I do agree that they have access to more money than maybe some of the others do, they have suffered the same inflationary impacts as a result of the pandemic. And when you think in terms of the Y's ability to extend programs for those that we're targeting, I think even a partial funding for what they're looking for goes a long way with their programmatic funding and offsetting the impacts of inflationary impacts from the pandemic. So I don't know that they are much different when they fall in line with that scoring criterion. I don't view them to be any different as having suffered impact, and I do think that their programs are far-reaching to many people.
Yeah, does that mean, are you okay with 1 through 7?
I'm okay with 1 through 7, but I would like some more consideration for partial funding for 8.
Okay. Let's deal with the current motion. If there is no opposition with the way the motion is worded now, the motion is to fund projects that have been ranked 1 through 7. All in favor, please raise your hand.
I guess
Okay.
I didn't raise my hand, so I guess the only caveat that I would say is to follow through with what Duggan suggested on 7 to provide that extra oversight for that relationship, because I agree with Tony. If you're going to have the motion, I would support it with the caveat that we address that relationship.
All right. The motion has been amended that we fund 1 through 7 with a caveat for Florida Dream Center for staff in the development of the contract to watch the relationships issues that have been pointed out by the committee.
That's acceptable.
Okay. You all right with that, Mr. Second?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So staff is putting that in. Okay.
Can we pull when you're done with that, David, can you pull it down? Because if there's going to be a vote, it'll be easier to see everyone and hands if we just have cameras.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So stop sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Stop
just
sharing
for the minute.
for a minute. So all in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Okay. Those opposed, similar sign. Okay, that was unanimous. Okay.
Now the tough part.
Now comes the hard part. Okay, so we have you can put that chart back up, David. Okay. We have over $2.5 million remaining. And the issue has been brought up. Do we partially fund YWCA? Or do we look at some of the other agencies and fund them completely?
So one observation is I look at these numbers, if it's 2.5 million, we could only fund, I mean, there's a handful. I mean, potentially you go to Gulf Coast Jewish Services, but they're substantially below the Y and Hope Villages. You couldn't fully fund the community health center without 3.5 million. So I guess I'm asking Michelle what I guess it was Michelle, what your thinking was when you said look at fully funding some other agencies. I'm not sure that 2.5 million gets you there.
Yeah, as I'm looking at it now, I'm realizing that the ones after that are big projects too. So, you know, you could fund Hope Villages, right? That would be, but then anything after the two after that would be partially funded.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not sure. I just am I'm just hesitant to just, and that's not what we're doing. I was just hesitant to say, oh, let's just give it to the Y because they're next in line without having the discussion about whether there are better uses for it. Because, and I do recognize that they've had, you know, the YMCA has had a lot of harm due to COVID, and they have had to experience the same inflationary costs as everyone else. It's just that this project was, you know, planned a long time ago. It's already in progress. That really is my hesitation. It's just that it seems like it's a project that has long been planned and has already been underway and will get done regardless of what we do. So I don't know. I mean, maybe we pull in Hope Villages along with it and partially fund it with a little bit less to the YMCA. I'm open to other people's thoughts.
May I ask, you know, what the significance of the difference in average score actually is? You know, when you look at the average score of what is above the line versus below the line, you know, numbers 9 through, you know, 13, where we're talking about a 4-point difference. So just as someone who's participating in this and coming from more of the contractor and GC side, you know, are we looking at this as a score value, or are we looking at, for instance, the Universalist Church of St. Petersburg? They have a transient population. They also do not have the networks that the YMCA has for fundraising, and so could potentially use those funds, or can use those funds in a more direct way, in a manner that maybe the others have more leverage. I just want to understand, kind of like, if we're going to look through these, what's the rubric now that we are trying to assess them in terms of funding?
Well, I'll respond to that, Christina, because, for example, I'm interested in hearing what Gail has to say, but I did not recommend the YMCA at all.
Neither did I.
Yeah, from my perspective, the project is far, as Michelle said, it's really far along. They are a very strong organization that was able to get this going. I'm not sure that they used a different measure, SVR, socially vulnerable index, which is another way of talking about it, but it's not one that motivated me. And I just felt that there were other projects that were higher. What I see in that number, though, is that other people disagreed strongly in the other direction, because, you know, it went from my not recommending it at all to making it to number 8. So I was trying to find a middle ground. I'm open to have the discussion, but you know, of the next 3, I would probably go for the health center, because the way my rubric is this: which of these organizations has the most direct impact on people who were impacted by COVID, and the least amount of runoff, if you will, administrative, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, that's a health center, but I'm persuadable.
I am curious though, if with respect to the average score, I don't know that takes into consideration whether we recommended it or not, right? So like, I think I scored the Y fairly high, but I didn't recommend it. So that isn't taken into account when we just look at it on this page. And, you know, a few other people are saying they didn't recommend it as well. So that's just something to think about, that we don't get stuck on the numbers. Like,
because I gave it 6. My ranking was 67. So it had an impact on the way I voted.
Slight interruption. We are scheduled to end at 4. Can I have a motion to extend the meeting till 4:30?
Sure.
Okay, have a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion.
No, I did. I had it.
Oh,
Robin
second.
made the motion and Christina second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Mhm.
Any opposition? Okay, we're extending to 4:30. Okay, all right. So we're discussing, where do we go next? Partial funding for why? Do we look at some of the other ones? Yeah, it's kind of hard because one of the ones that's in the top 7 was not in my top 7, so
Yeah.
I think the other thing we could consider is partially fund. So like the YMCA, the community health centers, the Gulf Coast Jewish Family, those are all bigger organizations. You could give them each some money and not fully fund any of them, you know, that could be a way to deal with it also.
What do we have left to allocate?
we
2.9
had
million.
2.9 million.
Okay.
What I would be interested in is understanding the evaluations from Gail and Robin, because I also think that while some of these organizations do have a direct impact, some of them were otherwise, did not seem to have contractors or plans in place. And I believe that there is a project timeline that's required for funding use. And so if we could use that as a weight to understand which projects can be funded and then would actually be complete with the project requirements. And I believe
I'm happy to go. The timeline is something that I did take into account with my evaluations to see if it was reasonable. I felt like in some cases, the applicants lacked adequate detail, but I also felt like from my own personal experience that they could fulfill the completion of the project when, prior to 2026, which is what the requirement is. So I didn't recall off the top of my head anyone that couldn't finish their work within the allocated time frame. So that's one aspect of it. So I don't have that concern. When it comes to, I know that Tony asked me a direct question about the why, and the other thing that I considered when in my scoring was how many people could be touched by and impacted by the money that we were recommending. And I feel like, for the why was one of them. The community health center, I think, is another one that that has a broad reach. And so I could support extending some money to the community health center. I felt like their proposal lacked adequate detail. You almost want to jump in and help them help themselves to a certain degree. So when you think in terms of a recommendation, that was a tough one for me because I didn't score them very high. They weren't one of my higher scores, I'll say, but I think that what they stand for and what they do is very broad reaching and apropos for the COVID impacts. I mean, what they do fundamentally is important. So I think, I don't know who it was, Christina, I think you may have mentioned that you would support, taking the remainder of the money and maybe reallocating partial funding down through 10. And I could support that.
Yeah, I want to thank you for that information, Gail. Thank you.
And I did want to question, and please everybody validate what I'm saying here. I wanted to know why there wasn't a full 990 provided with community health centers. Was that intentional or not? I think that was like the only one that didn't. There was one other that didn't have third party, but I feel they still had a 990.
I think, and I'll defer to somebody who knows, but I think the community health center is a federally chartered agency and not your classic nonprofit. So it has a different set of guidelines.
I raised that same question, Robin, and in fact, that impacted my scoring, but.
Yeah.
The
I
file was
don't-
incomplete.
Say it
What was
again.
it, David?
Eric?
The file was incomplete. It only has 2
incomplete?
pages.
Okay.
Ah, okay. Do we know why it's incomplete?
No, no.
That's a little scary.
The file is publicly available. It was not attached.
I think it was only 2 pages or something. It was, yeah, it was something there, but it wasn't the entire.
But hasn't that organization been around more than 2 decades?
Yeah, longer than that.
And they're a part of the federally qualified health system of care in our community. And so as I think about, looking at the YMCA, when you compare it to Navarro Health, and you look at the QCT, you can't begin to compare the impacts, which is something that they were asked about. YMCA was actually asked about quite a bit. So I absolutely would support Christina's recommendation of considering 8, 9, and 10 for partial funding.
Would somebody remind me what number 9, what the project, what are they doing
Hope
for
Villages.
$250,000? What is that project?
I think that's a
Refrigerators?
renovation.
Refrigerators and renovations, I think.
It was HVAC, I thought.
Yes. HVAC.
How does anybody feel about splitting the remainder 2.9 between the Y and the health center? And
I'd be strongly supportive of funding Hope Villages of America.
Say again.
I said I'd support us supporting number 9, Hope Villages of America. Are you seeking to include that one or skip over that one?
I was skipping it.
Okay.
For limited impact, but I'm just trying to find a solution here. So you're
because
saying
the work that they do, and because they do provide direct services in terms of food, something that's critical, especially if you're thinking about COVID relief, I would strongly support number 9, Hope Villages of America.
How about this? We add those 3 together and distribute the money pro rata.
Are we able to, is someone able to quickly access the applications to understand where if and when there are any funding gaps for, let's say, Hope Village, or, just to inform that maybe Hope Village does get fully funded and then the other 2 are split between the difference, so that we're not potentially looking over a need?
Well, I'm open to that, but I was going back to Cheryl's comment. I don't know if there's any much argument which 2 would have the greatest impact. And for sure, the health center. And Gail, I'm accepting that you're saying the Y. I don't know, and maybe we can look at it. I just don't think that Hope Village can compare with, direct impact on people as much as those 2.
I mean, they provide affordable housing and food. So to me, that's the most direct impact you can have, right? Is there's 2 basic needs.
It may be the most direct.
Their project description was HVAC replacement.
Right.
So, and somebody asked about funding, and you recall I asked them about the community development block grant. So that was $120,000 that they hope they will receive from the city of Clearwater.
Yes. I also believe, from what I remember from the application, that their HVAC system was actually struck by a vehicle or was in some.
No, that was HIP. That was HIP.
That was HIP. Okay, thank you very much. I was not sure which one that was.
Yeah, that was HIP.
So when I was talking about impacts, I was thinking food and medicine. Nothing against HVAC, but
okay.
Yeah, I guess, but the HVAC is what will help them provide the housing and the food, is what I was trying to say, right? That as far as the organization goes, they are doing a lot of direct services.
Okay. Well, I'm open to any, it seems like we're talking about allocating amongst the 3.
Mm-hmm.
If I hear it correctly, I'm open to a formula, but as I said, Gail has persuaded me about the maximum impact of the Y. I'm familiar with the health center. HVAC makes sense to me, but I'm looking for a formula that has the greatest reach on the most people.
Staff, do you have any recommendations or suggestions?
We're able to pull from the applications, first off, just, you know, any documents that you might need to review.
Well, what we're looking for is a suggestion of some formula that we could use. You know, Tony suggested proportionately, you know, like we have 2.9 million, Y is asking for 5.
So just a couple thoughts. You might want, you have sort of made the choice to fully fund 1 through 7.
That's correct.
There, if you wanted to revisit that, we could pull out of these projects for you 9, 10, 11, and 8 as well, portions of the project that could be completed. I think the question you'll want to ask an applicant is, you know, is completing this portion of this, you know, like HVAC, for example. Could you do 9 of 15 and that's impactful? You know, if it's a building, if they're able to get X, is that impactful to their, you know, could they still accomplish what they want to accomplish if partial funding is awarded? You know, those are questions that we could ask, or if you want to look at those individual applications, we could see what could be pulled out from them.
Well, Doug, I'd be cautious about reopening 1 through 7 because
Yeah,
completely agree.
I'm scared of that. So.
Completely agree. I would make the suggestion that we not reconsider 1 through 7, leave those as is, which we've all agreed to.
Yes.
And
do I have concurrence on that?
Yes.
Concur.
And then fully funding Hope Villages of America, and then splitting the difference between the YMCA and community health centers.
Oh,
is that a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
I will second that.
All right,
I
Michelle.
can support that. Yeah.
Okay, so the motion is to fully fund Hope Villages of America. And then some way we will, I don't know whether she meant 50-50 or how. Did you mean 50-50?
Yes, please, between YMCA and community health centers.
Okay, so fully fund Hope Villages of America. And what's remaining, which will be a little over $2 million. So each would get $1 million.
No, 2.5.
Yeah,
right.
7.
Yeah, it's 1.3 per each.
Yeah, Oh, I said over. I thought I said over $1 million. Okay. I wasn't exact because I didn't have the numbers. So Hope Villages, the motion is to fully fund Hope Villages of America, and then the funds that are remaining to be split equally between YMCA of St. Petersburg and community health centers. That's the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Are there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, David, take down the chart, please. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Opposed, like sign. Okay, that was unanimous.
So I have a question for you, Madam Chair, about the ranking in the event that we have cost savings or a project can't be completed. If we could get some guidance from you all about how we might continue down the line to allocate that, if we could sort of get a ranking of that, if we could just look at it and see if you have some suggestions to us. It's all going to depend on, you know, what the cost savings is, because, you know, $30,000 savings might not apply to something else. And we could kind of go down the line and ask, would this help you continue your project? No, then we go on to the next. But if we could look at that and get some guidance about how we might apply thoughts if we have cost savings or projects that can't be accomplished, so we don't have to necessarily come back to revisit this.
Any
Doug,
suggestions?
and how about if there's cost savings, allocating those to either the Y, evenly to the Y and the community health service until they're fully funded?
Okay.
That seems like a simple way to deal with that.
Yeah, the easiest way.
Yep, I support that too. That's a good idea.
You have consensus on that?
Yes.
Okay.
And let me ask you down the line, if for some reason, say, community health centers can't be accomplished and we end up with a significant piece of funding there, how do you want us to carry that down the line as the ranking, to see how it applies to each one? Just by rank going down the line?
What's your pleasure?
Can I ask how this would actually play out? Because this recommendation goes to the county commissioners, and then they're either going to accept it or they're going to do what they want. And then like a year from now, you're like, oh, there's this extra money. And then you go back to our recommendations, or does it have to go back to the commissioners? Is there a way to for us to reconvene if we needed to?
We could reconvene you. That's possible, and then send recommendations to them again. Based on a reconvening, we could, we have other parts of, processes that are out there, small projects that, maybe just moves on to those particular phases of projects. They may take the recommendations that you have and approve them in full. And if we sent them up to them, we'd send them with additional pieces of recommendations that this is how we would, allocate. But if you want to leave it alone and reconvene, we could do that as well.
It seems to me that like the third scenario, Tony mentioned, if anything was left over to have it go to the Y and community health. It seems the likelihood of the next scenario would be pretty small because the ask versus what they're getting in a partial funding, there's a pretty big spread there between them. So I don't know that next scenario would really come into play, and I'd love to get back together. I've quite enjoyed this group. So if in the unlikely event that third scenario happened, I would be willing to reconnect.
Okay.
I concur.
Yeah.
We're all in concurrence.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think Dave, just checking with David real quick for the chair, was there someone wanted to comment particularly on this item in particular from who's present, or on the next item for public comment?
I believe it was on this item. We can confirm with them. But yes, there was a desire for, yes, she raised her hand.
All right.
Who is this?
Sandra Forrest from, on behalf of the African People's Education and Defense Fund. And so public comment will be for 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, are we ready for that?
Yeah,
sure.
Let me make sure that we're done here. Okay, is everybody okay with our recommendations?
Yes, but could Duggan or somebody just restate what we've agreed to? I think it's 3 parts.
All right, so David, you want to pull that up?
Sure.
Quick. So the first recommendation was to fully fund 1 through 7. Then there was a second recommendation after that to fully fund number 9 and then split the remainder of the available funding equally between number 8 and number 10. And then after that, if there is funding that comes from cost savings or otherwise, also to equally apply that among number 8 and number 10. And if for some reason we end up with additional, money sitting, then the committee would be happy to reconvene and make additional recommendation to the county.
Okay.
Chair, do you want to get a motion and a second on that just to confirm that this is the process?
Well, we did 3 separate motions,
Fine.
but
We have
we
them.
can, okay, you got them? Okay.
May I add a comment that's a bit off the cuff?
Go right ahead, Robin.
Do all these organizations know, because they are a nonprofit, that they can do owner direct purchasing? And what that means is when they work with their general contractor, they understand the materials and the supplies. And typically it's like maybe your top 3 sectors. What happens is the owner purchased it direct through their nonprofit identification number, and they avoid paying taxes on the most expensive costs. You don't do it for nickel and diming. It's more for the very top ones. I didn't know if these folks knew that existed.
I don't know. And so I think it's a fantastic recommendation.
Yeah.
I'd be happy for us to work with you to make sure that we provide them with good guidance as they're going through this. So that if that is a way for them to avoid taxation, reduce the cost of projects, I think that's fantastic.
Happy to do so.
Great.
Okay. Are we done before? Okay, Sandra wanted to make a comment. Sandra Flowers.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I just from African People's Education Defense Fund, we just wanted to appreciate and salute PCF's transparent and objective process and the basing of your recommendations on the merit of the project and the proposal. And we also want to encourage each of you to schedule a visit to the APEDF headquarters on 18th Avenue South if you've not already been. Come and tour our facilities, meet the staff and volunteers, and see the programs in operation so you can see and hear for yourself the benefit that these programs are providing to the community. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 4, public comment for items that were not on the agenda. Is there any public comment for items that were not on the agenda?
Might have, I think Melinda Perry is there.
Okay.
Hi. This is
Hi.
Melinda.
Yes.
With Hope Villages. Mine was actually for the prior group, but I just wanted to also extend my appreciation to the committee for fully funding our project. It will make a huge difference in the lives of not only our guests, but also the individuals coming and receiving food from us. And I as well would love to extend the invitation to come for a tour. Love to have you see our mission in action and really feel the impact that we're making in the community. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. Is there anyone that would like to make a comment for any item that's not on the agenda?
And
Madam Chair, just thank you for doing a great job. This didn't look like it was, I'm sure you were doing a lot more than we were off camera, but again, my appreciation of the staff. I'm impressed with how you got through this process. So once again, thanks to the Community Foundation.
Thank you. Yes, I want to thank all of staff for their help and guidance.
Thank you.
Board of County Commission, these recommendations will go to the Board of County Commission at their March 28th meeting. At least it's tentatively scheduled, no longer scheduled for that date, huh?
No.
April, end of April.
End of April.
Yes.
Okay, a lot can happen. All right. May I have a motion to adjourn? If there is no Duggan or any staff, you all have any comments to make?
I just want to thank everyone for their involvement in this effort. It takes a lot to review all these proposals. I think there's an incredible amount of skill around the table, experience. People view these from different perspectives. I think that's the very most that we can ask for. And so to let you know how much we appreciate your time and your effort to work on this so that we could forward great recommendations to the county for their consideration.
No, thank
Thank you all.
It was a pleasure.
It was fun.
Thanks, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Really
Bye
fun.
bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Here.
So Duggan, would you give me a call later,